Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us today in this virtual space. So today I will discuss how freshwater turtles played a surprisingly important role in ancient Belize and in the Maya world more broadly. So for a long time, turtles were considered to be a common, low-status food source for everyone. It was not particularly tied to elites or rituals. However, new archaeological evidence is bringing these shells in the shadows to light. So in this talk, I want to reassess the use of freshwater turtles in ancient Belize from about 1500 BCE through the colonial era and examine their roles as food, tools, musical instruments, elite delicacies, ritual offerings, and trade goods, as has been documented by archaeology in Belize. And at the end, I will briefly touch on how learning about past turtle use can support modern conservation efforts for freshwater turtles today. So the start of my story is the Central American river turtle, and this species, scientific name Domitimus maui, is known as the hecate in Belize. It is a fully aquatic freshwater turtle that lives in slow-moving large rivers and lagoons, and it has a broad range, which is highlighted on the map in pink, across the southern Gulf of Mexico and the base of the Yucatan Peninsula in Belize and northern Guatemala. So this river turtle is very large. Adults reach 45 to 50 centimeters in shell length, so 18 to 20 inches, and they can weigh 10 to 15 kilograms or 22 to 33 pounds, so quite large. And in fact, some archaeological specimens that I have identified suggest that even larger turtles once existed. Since it's so big and meat-rich, the hecate was a highly desirable food source for many indigenous groups, and Belizean today tell me that it's quite delicious. So due to all of this, ancestral Maya communities that lived near waterways in what is now Belize would have had ample opportunities to catch these turtles. So as we will see, the hecate's availability and size made it important in daily subsistence, but it didn't stop there, and it became intertwined with Maya culture and economy in multifaceted ways. So freshwater turtles have been part of life in Belize for millennia. So on the map, I have highlighted some of the sites where freshwater turtles have been recovered in Belize. And archaeologists have found turtle bones and refuse deposits at some of Belize's earliest villages. This includes Cerro Maya, Colha, Cuello, and Pagbiton. And this shows that people were eating turtles as early as 1500 BCE. Moving forward throughout the Classic period, both small and large Maya sites exhibit evidence of turtle use, especially at sites near large rivers such as Cajalpech or Lower Dover. Notably at Caracol, which is a major city in Belize's interior, turtle bones turned up even in contexts far from natural habitats, suggesting that people transported turtles, or at least their shells, to this particular site. On the coast, sites like Cerro Maya and Marco Gonzalez on Ambergris Key also yielded turtle remains, indicating that turtles were also part of coastal diets and possibly trade networks, which I will discuss later. By the post-classic and into the early colonial period, turtle use in Belize reached new heights at places like Colha, Laguna de On, and Tipu. And notably, Lamanai exhibits an especially intense exploitation of turtles during its final centuries of occupation, and this continued well into the colonial period. So we know also from colonial records that both indigenous people and colonial settlers persisted in these practices throughout Belize. So in short, from 1500 BCE to about 1700 CE, turtles were consistently utilized in Belize as a vital food resource. But how do archaeologists actually know that turtles were used as food? So first, turtle bones are frequently found in ancient middens, basically garbage dumps, at many Maya sites. And people discarded turtle remains or turtle bones along with other food refuse. Some turtle bones also exhibit clear signs of human processing, including butchery marks and traces of burning at sites like Cerro Maya and St. George's Keys. And these clues tell us how turtles were slaughtered and prepared for cooking. So at Lamanai, as is depicted on the slide here, I found many cut marks and chop marks on the bridge. And the bridge is the portion of the shell that connects the top carapace to the bottom plastron. And this suggests that my hunters cut the shell open at the edges, which is likely the easiest way to extract the meat while keeping the shell mostly intact. And some shells appear to have been opened carefully, perhaps to preserve the carapace in one piece, and we will see why later this would have been important. Burning is also a common feature of archaeological turtle shells, as seen at Cerro Maya, St. George's Keys, and Pagbiton. And at Lamanite, I identified a concentration of burned turtle shells in one household midden. And these bones displayed a light, patchy burning, which is quite unusual, but likely stems from the cooking methods. So it doesn't look like the shells were actually tossed on a fire because this would burn them more completely to like a very black color. So instead, I suggest that the evidence fits with turtles being roasted on a grate or a spit above coals, or they could also have been slow smoked over a lower heat. And this method would cook the meat while not completely charred the shell black. Such a cooking technique is actually documented in traditional communities for other animals. So and they do this because it makes the meat tender and preserves it longer. So the takeaway here is that turtles were not just eaten, they were skillfully butchered and cooked, showing a culinary know-how that was passed down through generations in Belize. The usefulness of turtles did not end with meat. The shells themselves were valuable secondary products. So one striking use of turtle shells was as musical instruments, especially drums. In fact, a famous mural at Bonampak in Mexico, which is pictured here, depicts a musician beating on what appears to be a turtle shell drum with deer antlers. And this would have produced a deep resonant sound, possibly to mimic thunder in ritual ceremonies. And this isn't just art, right? Archaeology in Belize has confirmed this. So at Sunantunich in western Belize, archaeologists discovered a complete Hecate shell modified into what is likely a drum. It has a drilled hole on the shell, probably to attach a handle or a strap, and even showed remains of red paint. And this hints at a use in a ceremonial context. Turtle shells and bones were also fashioned into other tools and ornaments. So for instance, pieces of turtle shell could be carved or ground to make perforated discs as seen on the slide here. And we suppose that these discs could have been used as ornaments or possibly spindle whorls to spin textiles. And such artifacts have been identified at Barton Rami, Caracol, Cerro Maya, Colha, and Santa Rita Corozal, and this is just to name a few. Shell fragments could also be used as containers or bowls, and small turtle bones or shell pieces have been polished into jewelry or decorative inlays as well. This has been seen at Cerro Maya as well as Lamanai, which you see here on the slide. And believe me when I tell you that the shell fragment here is polished, it's just really hard to photograph. So in short, turtle shells were a valuable resource for music, crafts, and daily work. Beyond the daily subsistence, turtles also had a role in the social, political, and ritual spheres. So it turns out that the Maya elite had a special appetite for Hecates. So when I compiled turtle bone data in the Maya world, I found more Hecate remains generally in high-status elite contexts than in common households. So if you see the sites on the map with the blue dots, those are ones with Hecate in elite contexts. So in Belize, for example, excavations at Lamanai's elite residences and at Caracol's royal courts uncovered disproportionately large quantities of turtle bones compared to non-elite areas. So why is that, right? Well, it's likely because serving turtle meat at feasts or dinners was a status symbol used by hosts to showcase wealth and access to exclusive foods, just as they did with other animals like deer and turkeys. So turtles from far-off rivers would have been seen as a delicacy at a center like Caracol that doesn't have big rivers nearby. Turtles also show up in ritual contexts like elite burials and caches. A notable discovery outside of Belize was at Teotihuacan in central Mexico, where a Hecate was placed in a high-status burial there, over 350 kilometers outside the turtle's natural range. So you can imagine that bringing a turtle such a distance to an important city underscores its symbolic value. In Belize, we see similar patterns on a smaller scale. At Caracol, a turtle shell with drill holes was found in a royal tomb, perhaps as a ritual item or an offering that accompanied the deceased. And I've already talked about the turtle shell drums being used in ceremonies as well. In Maya mythology, turtles are sometimes linked to earth and water symbolism. So for example, there are Maya stories of gods drumming on turtle shells to herald thunder. And we also have the emergence of the maize god from a turtle shell earth, like the plate on the slide. So it's clear that turtles were not just everyday food. They had ritual significance and they were associated with elites and ceremonies. So access to turtle products could reinforce social hierarchy, and using turtle shells in ritual performances could invoke powerful symbolism from fertility to rain. So all this evidence overturns this old idea that turtles were insignificant in elite or ritual life. One big question is how turtles reached places far from beyond their natural habitat. So the archaeological evidence indicates that hecates were included in trade networks in ancient times, similar to other animals like deer, peccaries, turkeys, marine shells, and marine fish. So for instance, as shown by the yellow stars on the map, Hecate remains have been found at Caracol, high in the Maya Mountains, and even at Mayapan in the Yucatan, so another inland city. And this indicates that turtles or turtle parts were transported over long distances. Of course, it's challenging to determine what was transported. So do we have a live turtle that is transported, or simply fresh or dried meat, or simply the shell alone? However, recent genetic research on modern Hecate populations found surprising genetic similarities between turtle populations from unconnected river basins. So the biologists concluded that ancient human intervention, basically moving live turtle around, would be the most plausible explanation for the observed patterns. So in other words, centuries of turtle trade and perhaps even human-managed turtle dispersal have left a genetic signal. And I'm currently working with a team to collect ancient DNA samples from turtle bones across the Maya world to find evidence to support this hypothesis. So stay tuned. To support such trade, or even simply to maintain a steady supply of meat, the concept of turtle management or husbandry has been floated. So ethnohistoric accounts from other regions, like in the Amazon, and even historic Belizean practices describe keeping captured turtles alive in pens or ponds until ready to eat. And in the colonial era, we know that British settlers on the coast of Belize built turtle corrals to hold sea turtles. So it's possible that the ancestral Maya did something similar, namely holding turtles in reservoirs or enclosures to fatten them or ensure a fresh supply of meat for later, essentially a form of aquatic ranching. However, I want to stress that this is just a working hypothesis. And so far, the archaeological science hasn't found clear evidence of turtle husbandry in Maya times. A compilation of isotopic data from turtle bones, which is used to detect here if animals were fed maize, which is the main cultivar of the ancestral Maya, it did not reveal any sign of a controlled diet in the tested samples. Basically, besides about 2 turtles, none of them seem to consume a big quantity of maize. And this suggests that if the Maya kept turtles, they either fed them wild foods, or they kept them for a very short period of time, and this would not leave an isotopic trace in their bones. So in short, turtles were certainly moved around via trade networks. And while captive management is an intriguing idea, it remains to be confirmed through future research. But for now, what is clear is that turtles were valuable enough to be transported over long distances, linking aquatic environments in Belize with far-flung cities through commerce and even possibly tribute. So in conclusion, freshwater turtles, especially the Hecate, played many roles in ancient Belize. They were a source of nutrition, a material for tools and musical instruments, a delicacy and status symbol for elites, a part of ritual offerings, and even a commodity in trade. They were common resources in the sense that many people ate them, but they were also special in that they could convey status and spiritual meaning. Fast forward to today, and the Hecate is in peril. So overhunting and habitat loss have decimated its population, and the species is now considered to be critically endangered. So ironically, a creature that once sustained Maya communities for millennia now struggles to survive. And here archaeology can meet conservation. Studying how the ancestral Maya managed turtles underscores the Hecate's cultural importance. Efforts are obviously underway in Belize to save the Hecate. So we have the Hecate Conservation and Research Center in southern Belize, for example, that breeds and studies these turtles to boost wild populations. In particular, I also want to highlight that October is Hecate Awareness Month. And this is a reminder that the Hecate, as well as other freshwater turtles, were once integral to Maya life, and that losing them would mean losing part of Belize's cultural heritage. So to wrap up, the story of turtles in Belize teaches us about cultural heritage, but also sustainability and responsibility. The ancestral Maya used these turtles in diverse ways, yet, as far as we can tell, they never drove them to extinction. So now it's up to us using science, history, and community action to ensure that that these turtles can keep swimming in our waters. And so by learning from the past and taking action now, we can all give the Hecate and other turtles a fighting chance. I want to thank all of these people and funding sources, and I will take questions. Thank you.